Okay, so our previous video on symbolization principles ended on yet another cliffhanger. What was that cliffhanger? Well, so we had observed that when we symbolize our English sentence, we're translating the sentence into our new symbolic language. And we said that why are we doing this? Because we're interested in studying validity. And so we said that our translation needs to capture the parts of the English sentences that are relevant to validity and should ignore the parts that aren't relevant to validity. And the question was going to be, okay, well, how are we going to ignore the parts that aren't relevant to validity while still capturing the parts that are? So we're going to need one new piece of terminology to describe how our symbolization is going to work. Simple piece of terminology, but it is new. And that new phrase is atomic sentence. So we have here a list of 6 sentences. Some of them are atomic, namely, he kissed her nicely and she will marry him. Those are atomic. He doesn't confess and she's leaving him. Those are atomic. On the other hand, the conditionals, if he kisses her nicely, she will marry him, and if he doesn't confess, she will leave him. Those are not atomic. So how do we define atomic sentence? So an atomic sentence does not contain other sentences. He kissed her nicely. It has parts like he and kissed, but it doesn't have any sentences as parts. So it's atomic. On the other hand, if he kisses her nicely, she will marry him. That does contain other sentences. It contains the sentence, he kisses her nicely, and it also contains the sentence, she will marry him. So that's not atomic. So the first is atomic because it does not contain other sentences. The second is not atomic because it does contain other sentences. Okay, so when we symbolize a conditional, we'll proceed like this. We have our conditional, if he kisses her nicely, she will marry him. He kisses her nicely, that's the antecedent, because it's the if part, and she will marry him, that's the consequent. So we have, he kisses her nicely, arrow, she will marry him, because the antecedent goes before the arrow, and the consequent goes after the arrow. We then introduce a symbolization scheme, and what's that? What we say is the capital letter P, that's going to stand for he kisses her nicely, and the capital letter Q, that stands for she will marry him. And that means that we can symbolize the whole sentence as P arrow Q. P stands for he kisses her nicely. He kisses her nicely is the antecedent, so P should go before the arrow. The consequent of the initial sentence is she will marry him, so that should go after the arrow, but we're going to have Q stand for she will marry him, so Q should go after the arrow, and that's what we have, P arrow Q. And that is our symbolization of this conditional. So how about if he doesn't confess, she's leaving him? Well, antecedent is he doesn't confess. Consequent is she's leaving him. Antecedent is he doesn't confess because that's the if part. So we have he doesn't confess, arrow, she's leaving him. We'll say W will stand for he doesn't confess, and R will stand for she's leaving him, and so we'll have W arrow R. And that will be our a symbolization of if he doesn't confess, she's leaving him, because we have the letter that stands for he doesn't confess, which is the antecedent, goes in the antecedent of the new sentence, and R, which stands for she's leaving him, goes in the consequent of the new sentence. Okay? So that's how it works. So atomic sentence, so we already have one symbol, the arrow, and now we're going to have some others. We're going to have atomic sentences in our symbolic language. So in English, we have atomic sentences that don't contain other sentences. And in our symbolic language, we're going to have atomic sentences that don't contain other sentences. What will they be? They'll be capital letters between P and Z. So P, Q, R, all the way up to X, Y, Z. All of those are atomic sentences in our symbolic language. So how do we symbolize? As follows. We find the antecedent and the consequent. We write an arrow. We put the antecedent on the left of the arrow. We put the consequent on the right of the arrow of the original sentence. We choose different capital letters between P and Z for each different atomic sentence, and then we replace the English atomic sentences with our chosen sentence letters. And that's how you do it. And we'll start symbolizing more complex sentences and other kinds of sentences besides conditionals. But this is how you symbolize a simple conditional sentence. So we're going to be doing some of this in the Logic 2010 program. So I'm going to have 2 other videos in this unit on how to symbolize, how to use the Logic 2010 program, and in particular how to symbolize with it. So that's the Logic 2010 that's what will be in the other videos. So you'll want to watch those and then do the homework. There's also an antecedent consequent quiz on the Canvas site and a discussion on there's some videos about online learning which I would also like you to watch, and then have a little discussion about them with some fellow students. So watch the other Logic 2010 videos, watch the online learning videos, do the online learning discussion, do the antecedent consequent quiz on the Canvas site, and do the Logic 2010 assignment. And that's what you got to do. If you have any questions, please let me know.